abstention, if possible. I realise that you can't vote against it, but democracy's got to have some place if you don't agree to something. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Kalinda will make sure we pick your abstaining on this forthcoming vote up. Thank you. Kia ora, members. Welcome back. We'll reconvene. And Kalinda, have we updated the words on the motions? Okay, Kalinda's not with us as yet. Members, just bear with us. I think the staff are just working things out. Kalinda or Megan, are you with us now, please?
Mr. Chair, it's Sandra here. It looks like they're still working on that at the moment. You might need to give them just a couple more minutes.
Kia ora. Sorry everyone, Megan here. I am back.
Megan,
apologies.
With you.
Great. Look,
I'll hand to you, Megan.
Fantastic. Thank you. And sorry for the delay. This is really the first plan change we've had since the Act came into force at the end of last year. So what we're trying to do is just ensure we are crossing all T's and dotting all I's to make sure that the resolution or the advice we're giving you is as accurate as possible. Kalinda at the moment is just putting in some new words, which, as I said, doesn't change the content of the conversation that you will have been having. And I will take you through that when Kalinda's ready for that. So that will come up on screen when she's through. But it relates to the new clauses in that enabling supply bill, where it now says that all plan changes and private plan changes have to give effect to these residential standards. There is a discretion for council that where a plan change doesn't fully give effect or has any provisions that might slightly change it, even in a positive way, that there's the ability for you to still accept that private plan change, notwithstanding that it might have some slight changes to those blanket kind of provisions of those standards. So that's where we're at the moment, because there are some things that this plan change is proposing that is slightly different to those blanket provisions. But we feel that that's fine for the purpose of where we're heading at the moment and this particular decision, and that work will be one of the matters that we'll continue to work through in processing, and we could even make a submission on it as we have in section C in the Chair's recommendation. So you'll see up on screen the new AI in red. I'll just let you read it. It's a belts and braces approach that we're taking here, given this is the first plan change we've had since this Act's come into being. The Act is very confusing and not very well written in this particular area. And so we just want to be crystal clear that there are some small elements of this which is not entirely consistent with these MDRS, these residential standards. However, we're still recommending, and as per the conversations, that we process this, accept it as a private plan change through the process, and that council can make submissions, and it may well be on these matters, but it'll be on the matters that we've discussed over the last hour or so with you. I do apologise, the change is probably larger than I was expecting in the conversations we were having in the background. It's just something really new to us, and the first time we've approached it. So, but I'm happy to take questions, or any concerns that you might have. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Megan, and thanks to legal and other staff, Kalinda as well, for looking at that. Are there questions on this, members, or is it straightforward? I just do want to make sure that you've got ample time to consider this. Are there any queries about this change? None? We're satisfied with it? Getting told I've got that. Sorry, I remember Karen Wilson. Did you have a question, Karen?
Yes, please. Megan, I suppose in a clumsy sort of way, with my reference to Chloe around referencing Schedule 1, 25.4, it was really about the ability to not accept or adopt a plan change. So in terms of the recommendations there, A1, which I mean, you hit on before, to be honest, are you saying that can you just explain that again? Because I guess that was the crux of it, that consideration around a cultural values assessment and alongside that subsection, what was the consideration that you put or not put? And now you're saying that you have, but there's another subsection that applies on a different schedule. So I'd like to get my head around what that means, please, because that was the point I was trying to drive on, but because it's so new, we're all coming to grief.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, fair enough. As I said, this is new for us, trying to understand this Act and quite how it applies then to private plan changes. Let me deal firstly, Karen, with your the question that you, or the conversation you were having with Chloe around the cultural values assessment, and whether that was a matter that could be used to reject this private plan change at this particular point in time. And Chloe's response was that the applicant has, for the purposes of this part of the process, looked to include as much of and to be consistent with that assessment, but that is a matter that is a merit matter, which will continue to be conversations and details and analysis of that through the process as it continues over the coming months. For the purposes, though, of Section 25.4 and those reasonably narrow reasons why a plan change could be rejected at this stage, our advice is that there is no reason for that to occur as in relation to the cultural values assessment and how the applicant is looking to outwork that. So not at this stage. The clause you see before you, the new one in red, is actually around clause 35. So it's a different one, and it's one that's come in force because of the new Act that came in at the end of the year. And what that Act says is that all plan changes and private plan changes have to give effect to these medium density residential standards. Where they don't, in a huge way or in a tiny little way, like, for example, a precinct, which in this case, putting a precinct on here might change some of those medium density residential standards. There is a discretion for the council to not accept this private plan change because it doesn't give full effect to those standards. There is also obviously the discretion to, yes, accept it. And so what we're saying here is that because there are some precinct provisions which are a little bit different to those blanket standards, we do need to say that yes, we still have discretion to accept this, and that is what we're going to do. So I hope that's clear. It is confusing. It's not the same questions of whether we should not accept this because of the existing reasons in the Act. This is just in relation to this Intensification Act that came through at the end of last year. So the content conversation we've had hasn't changed. We're just trying to be really clear. You do have discretion, and we're recommending that you use that to accept this and put it into the process.
Through the chair, thank you, Megan. I think it's incomplete. I think if one is using one that has more detail and relates to a different topic, if it's intended to trump what I was viewing in 25.4a, then that's not an answer. I accept what we're doing here, and I accept that it's new, but I would have thought that because that clause of Schedule 1 has the ability to break the deadlock in terms of should we process or not, i.e. it says you can or you can't. And it's not, we've not, as in council, hasn't used it in that context before. My concern is that it would be used as a precedent in terms of you can get another clause from another schedule that actually you would say on the hoof that therefore gives you enough comfort as the planning committee to overrules a strong sentiment, but that's what I'm thinking. 25.4a, because of where it sits, is strong in its view and might be vague in its subsequent subsections. But to use another schedule and then another clause, I wouldn't have thought that was, good precedent to be setting around the legislation and how we would do it, because we're going to get through this quickly. I have huge reservations as my last kōrero.
Kia ora, Karen, and just to be really clear, there's no trumping going on or one becoming more important than the other. They're two different elements that we're looking at now because we've got this new act. So we've consistently been saying that under clause 25, there are only certain reasons why you can not accept it or reject it at this stage. We don't feel any of those are met. We do feel that even though there are questions of merit, that needs to happen through the process. So that's the same in all of those, like items A2 onwards are all about that clause. This one's just in relation to this new clause relating to the new act.
No, I understand that. My comments remain. I'm still not comfortable and don't think that applies on this occasion.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for testing that, Karen, and thank you, Megan. I've got some other questions there too. Just at the outset, Megan, I'm just doing a little electronic exchange here, text and emails, and watching this meeting. But can you consider the A2? A number of councillors have raised the climate impacts, possible climate impacts of the application. Is there merit in the bracketed section at A2 after soils adding climate impacts? Now, these are significant, right? And I'm raising this because they are that we're talking about emergency response here. Can you just give that some consideration and tell us whether there's merit in adding climate impacts?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, you can. Obviously, there's the Chair's Rec C below, which talks specifically to a submission that council might make around other matters. But and clearly, climate change is going to be one of those based on the conversation today. However, if you did want to add in climate impacts to that A2, then yes, that's fine. So. Sounds
just
like
checking
let's do that then.
Okay, I think do that. I'm just going to check with Councillor Hills, Councillor Coombe, Councillor Henderson. I think that's, I think all three of you would be making that point, would you not?
Yep. Is it better to put it in the C, Chair, Megan?
I think we've got it up at A2, and Megan, if we cover it at A2.
Yes, that's fine. It's very clear the direction that you've set today. So clearly in the submission that we will put to you and to the delegated group, we will include matters of climate. So, yeah. Okay,
got it covered. Now, questions. Councillor Chris Fletcher, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put in the sidebar that my questions were responded to by Megan with her response to Member Wilson. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Sorry, I'm just struggling to keep up with the reading on various devices here, and I think I have another question from Councillor Walker.
Sure, so I've just got a question about the wording in A1. I think it's rather clumsy. There are two separate but related issues. One is around 25.4a Schedule 1, and then the other one is around 35.2 in the relationship with 35.1. I would prefer it if that statement was made considerably clearer because an ordinary person reading that would not understand it. I think that it could be broken up into two separate sentences. I also think in part there's a relationship between what we're stating around this private plan change and the scale of the plan change as it goes to the issues that we're considering, which means that it's, from my perspective, a matter of some significance. And given the concern that others have stated around precedents and the like, because I think we'll see more of this, I think it's important to have our words right so that it can be easily understood. And if we can't get it right now, then let's delegate some time to the wording around that so we do get it right and it's crystal clear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Megan, in the break, you've been sitting down with legal. You've considered how to frame this. You've come up with what is before us. Councillor, Member Karen Wilson has quizzed you well on parts of that particular A1 as well. Are you satisfied, and can you give us confidence that our senior staff are satisfied that there is clarity in the way these words are framed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Councillor Walker. I'm not going to deny that it's a complex paragraph, but that is in direct correlation with the legal provisions. And I did mention that they have been drafted. There are some drafting uncertainties and difficulties in there. So, look, I am. I've had this reviewed, and written and reviewed by the legal team. And while I guess it is long and complex, I am happy that it deals with all of the matters that we have to deal with, that you have to deal with. And just to be aware, this will keep coming to you now every time we have a private plan change because of this new act. So, yeah, I'm not going to deny the complexity, but I am satisfied that that is appropriate, and I wouldn't advise breaking it up or trying to make it any clearer. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll leave it there. I think we've tested that one hard, members. We are talking about the Resource Management Act here, and maybe we could put that in full, actually, just so that we know at the top we're talking about the Resource Management Act. But look, I don't want to make a meal of this right now. And I think that exhausts all the questions. Have I missed anybody? Oh, Councillor Simpson, sorry.
Thanks. I was all good until Megan spoke just at the end. So you're saying we can actually say no now, right? But your advice is to accept it as it is, noting because the recommendations are as they are, you noting that all our concerns around infrastructure, funding, soils, climate change, etc., will be dealt with as part of the ongoing process. Is that correct? Because up till now, I've always thought you cannot reject, but you're saying you can, but your advice is to accept the request. You've noticed in 3, it's inappropriate to adopt the private plan change. You've got a full stop in a new sentence. I think resolutions aren't supposed to have full stops in them, but that's grammatical. We'll leave that for another day. But is that, am I in the right place now? Because I've rejected one of these before and got myself into trouble. So I'm not that I just want to know your advice is to vote for these because the concerns that we have will be dealt with as part of the ongoing process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Back to you, Megan.
That is, yeah. Sorry, through the chair. Yes, that is correct. So there's effectively now with this new act, this other element of how a plan change gives effect to these density standards. So on everything else that we've talked about, soils, infrastructure, climate, all of that stuff. Our advice remains consistent as we have, in the last few years with you, that there are very limited reasons why you can reject at this stage, and we don't believe there are any reasons for that. The second element, the new bit about the standards, that we're just doing a belt and braces for you, and we're saying again, there is no reason in our mind to reject it at this stage. And again, we will continue to work through that in the processing of the application.
Thank you, Chair. A supplementary. So if you said no, there's a risk that we would be in a legal process which would cost us money. Is that correct? Because there aren't enough.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. That sorted it for me.
Good. Thanks, Councillor Simpson, for checking. And I have one last question from Member Karen Wilson. Karen Wilson.
Kia ora. In trying to look at a way forward, because clearly Megan had strong views through the chair on the application of Schedule 1 as it relates to the cultural values assessment, which is what I highlighted in the beginning. Now, in lieu of that, depending on how this vote goes, I'm wondering through the chair whether, as well as infrastructure funding, soils, climate impacts, the cultural values can be added there, so it's not just those pieces that will be looked at. You've got there as in particular. So if it is that's what's considered, which I do not believe at all, because I'm not sure how you council can assess a cultural values assessment and then apply clause 25(4)(a) and say it doesn't in terms of rejection. If that is the case, then I would like to think that there's an in particular there that can be applied, which alongside climate impacts and the like, and it talks to cultural values.
Thank you, Member Wilson. I'll go to you, Megan. On the face of it, I don't have an issue with that, and referring to cultural values. So, Megan, can I just check in with you, please? This is further amending A Roman 2.
That's fine if that's what you wish to do, Ms. Chair. Yep.
I just need to check with the other members. No objections there, members. I think that's the final amendment. Member Wilson, you'll be satisfied with that. And Kalinda, can you just put those words up so we strike out the word "and" where it is, we put a comma, climate impacts, and with the words cultural values, Member Wilson?
Thank you.
Cultural values. Good. Okay. Good contributions all round. I think we've all spoken to this, and we will now go to the vote. And at the end of the vote, I will note the abstention of Councillor Chris Fletcher. So it is moved by the chair and seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Cashmore. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. To the contrary, say no.
Chair Darby, could I please have my vote recorded against A? That's Councillor Hills.
Okay, and we're recording Councillor Chris Fletcher's vote of abstention and Councillor Richard Hill's against the A. Thank you. Are there any other votes to note? I declare that passed.
Oh, sorry, Chair, I'll go against A as well. Councillor Henderson here.
And Member Wilson, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Member Wilson. Thank you. Members, that concludes that item, and I think it concludes the meeting, but I always like to check with Kalinda. Kalinda, we've concluded all our business today.
That's right, Chair.
Thank you, members.